Emily Sanders began her day when most of Chicago was still nestled in dreams. The sky was a tapestry of grey, and the lights of the Marlowe Tower still outshone the fading stars. She pushed her cleaning cart with a practiced rhythm, almost a dance, as if she were one with the very space she inhabited. No one wished her a good morning. No one inquired about her well-being. People simply walked past her as though she were but a part of the polished marble floor she meticulously cleaned. Yet Emily was quite accustomed to this. Anonymity offered her a certain protection and focus. For there, unseen by hurried eyes, she carried a purpose that few would ever truly grasp. As she diligently scrubbed the immaculate corridors of the corporate tower, Emily committed words to memory in a myriad of languages. Her earpiece held, together with tape, whispered Arabic verbs to her between one smudge and the next. Her cherished notebook, tucked away discreetly within the supply closet, was filled with various alphabets. She spoke a remarkable 9 languages, not as a mere pastime, not for any particular status, but out of sheer necessity, and out of a deep, abiding love. Because at home, awaiting her each evening, was Noah, her 10-year-old son, who was autistic and nonverbal, and Emily had discovered early in his young life that language might well be the only true bridge between them and the wider world. When Noah was but 3 years old, doctors had suggested he might never speak, that he might never grasp metaphors, nor recognize faces, nor comprehend the intricacies of a dialogue. But Emily firmly refused to accept that verdict as a final sentence. She observed her son with an acute, discerning eye. She found that he responded to sounds in other languages, particularly to the Arabic he'd overheard from their Syrian neighbors. It was then she made a steadfast decision. She would learn every conceivable form of language, both verbal and non-verbal, to reach Noah wherever he might be. She was a mother driven by profound listening and the sheer stubbornness of love. The apartment they called home sat above a tire repair shop, its windows perpetually misted over, always carrying the faint scent of burning rubber. Noah enjoyed sitting by the window where the wind playfully danced with the thin curtain. He had precise habits: white rice with cinnamon on Mondays, hardcover books meticulously lined up on Wednesdays, and he would only fall asleep if his star patterned blanket was placed on his left side. Emily respected each ritual as if it were a sacred tongue. She had no desire to change him. She wished only to understand him, and to equip him with the tools to express himself with dignity, even if it was through icons, images, or syllables from distant lands. Emily's nights were a demanding blend of arduous labor and intense study. She utilized free applications to learn languages, watched videos with Egyptian Arabic subtitles, and exchanged messages with volunteers from the Middle East who were kind enough to correct her. She slept little, ate even less, but a deep, unwavering flame burned within her. Every new word learned was a potential gateway of communication with Noah. And when, on one memorable occasion, he gently touched her hand after she uttered "Habibi," she wept silently. It was merely a single syllable, but it carried an entire world. At the Marlowe Tower, no one knew any of this. To the executives, Emily was simply the woman who cleaned the elevators and carried the faint scent of lemon disinfectant. Her colleagues, on shift, affectionately called her the Quiet One, and often joked that she must have been a nun in a previous life. She paid them no mind. She had no need to be seen. She only needed to keep her job, cover Noah's therapy expenses, and save enough for a new version of his alternative communication device as the old one consistently froze. Invisibility, for her, was an acceptable trade-off for the invaluable commodity of stability. Mornings were always much the same, until that particular Thursday. Emily was in the main lobby when she overheard the sudden commotion over the security guards' radios. An unexpected foreign visitor had arrived. An Arabic name was murmured with a noticeable hint of confusion. The receptionist's eyes widened. No translator was readily available. The directors began to stir, visibly disoriented. The man, elegant and imposing, wore an embroidered keffiyeh, and his eyes scanned the surroundings with a growing wariness. Emily paused. She recognized something familiar in that discomfort. It was the very same feeling she often saw in Noah when he entered places that were simply too loud. The visitor spoke rapidly, with a distinct Levantine accent. The executives didn't even know where to begin. The tension in the air was almost palpable, a heavy weight. And then, almost without conscious thought, Emily approached. Still holding her mop, she spoke in a quiet yet firm voice. "Salam alaikum." The man stopped. He looked directly at her. The directors furrowed their brows in surprise. Emily continued, now in fluid Arabic, asking if she could be of assistance. The man replied, his relief evident. A genuine dialogue had begun. For the very first time that day, someone had truly heard him, and everyone around, who had been utterly blind to Emily's presence moments before, now gazed upon her as if witnessing something utterly impossible. Emily translated each sentence with both precision and heartfelt empathy. Her hands gestured, softly, as though the dance of her fingers helped to maintain the harmony of the words. She explained that the visitor was an important businessman from the Gulf who had come to discuss a cultural project of great significance. He had been quite frustrated at finding no one prepared to welcome him in his own tongue. The official interpreter was still en route, but at that moment he was no longer needed. Emily was quite enough. And the rather awkward silence of the lobby gave way to a new kind of listening, one where even the familiar swish of the mop was accorded respect. In less than an hour, the entire situation had transformed. The visitor, now visibly relaxed, praised Emily's kindness and her remarkable fluency. He remarked that he rarely encountered such a level of understanding, not even among seasoned professionals. Someone, perhaps subtly, recorded a portion of the conversation on a mobile phone. The video, unbeknownst to Emily, would be published that very afternoon. "The cleaner who saved the international negotiation," read the headline. It went viral within a matter of hours, but Emily only truly grasped the impact the following day when Human Resources requested she come up to the 28th floor, an unprecedented event in her long tenure with the company. She entered the meeting room, her uniform still damp from her morning's work. The Director of Corporate Relations greeted her with a rather forced smile and a somewhat bewildered look. They expressed their profound impression of her performance. They then wished to offer her a new position, cross-cultural consultant focusing on linguistic mediation. It would come with a substantial raise, health insurance benefits, and access to company-paid courses. Emily, so accustomed to being overlooked, could barely react. She simply asked, would the new role allow for flexible hours? She needed to accompany Noah to his appointments. When they confirmed that it would, she accepted. No fanfare, no embrace. Just a quietly pleased nod. That evening, upon arriving home, she shared the news with Noah using his adapted tablet. He touched the image of the star, the symbol they used for good things. Emily smiled, fighting back tears. She knew he wouldn't grasp the concept of a promotion, but he certainly recognized her joy. She prepared him rice with cinnamon, just as she did every Thursday, and before he drifted off to sleep, she put up a new poster in his room, adorned with colorful Arabic letters. Noah looked at it for a moment, then returned to stroking his star blanket. Small gestures, small victories. That was how their life was taking shape. The new position also brought forth new gazes. In the cafeteria, colleagues began greeting her by name. A human resources manager even sought her advice on French pronunciations. But alongside this came some uncomfortable comments. "You're so articulate, it hardly seems like you studied on your own," someone remarked. Another inquired if she had learned everything from Google. Emily took a deep breath. She knew that no matter how many languages she spoke, she would still be seen by many as the cleaner who got lucky. But that truly didn't matter. Her focus remained steadfastly on Noah, and every new word he learned, every button pressed on his tablet, was a powerful reminder of why she persevered. Noah began to show a greater interest in the Arabic recordings Emily left playing in their home. He responded positively to the sound of the soft consonants, especially those that resembled sighs. She reorganized the commands on his tablet to include simple Arabic vocabulary. And then something quite remarkable happened. He began to form patterns. He would touch 3 consecutive icons that indicated hunger, rice, and cinnamon, all in Arabic. Emily understood this as a gentle cry for connection. Her son was learning to navigate the world, even if through small windows. With her new salary, Emily was able to purchase a more modern version of Noah's communication device. The software came equipped with contextual intelligence and could learn from his usage patterns. Gradually, his responses became quicker. The school noticed. The therapist offered commendations, and Emily felt her chest expand like a home that, at long last, receives natural light. Everything was beginning to fall into place, not perfectly, but with a newfound coherence. She wasn't seeking miracles, she was seeking dignity, and in that moment, she was beginning to believe that perhaps it was indeed possible. The following morning, upon returning to the Marlowe Tower, Emily ascended to the executive floor for the very first time as an administrative employee. The elevator mirror reflected her image in the same uniform as always, but something within her had fundamentally shifted. It wasn't power she felt, it was responsibility. She thought of Noah. She thought of how many people like him remained invisible. And she made a promise to herself, if she now had a voice, she would use every word to open doors, so that others, like her son, might find their way through. The new position brought more than just badges and spreadsheets. For Emily, it brought the challenging art of existing in 2 worlds at once. That of the corporate elite, where words dance masquerading as strategy, and that of real life, where every spoken phrase is painstakingly built with effort and heartfelt affection. In the meeting rooms, she brokered agreements between executives and foreign dignitaries as if she had always belonged there. But deep inside, she still carried the constant doubt. How long would they accept her before wishing to mold her into something else? She was seen as an exception, never as the first of many. And that, undoubtedly, weighed on her. Her work gradually expanded to include training sessions on cultural diversity and communication accessibility. Emily subtly seized this opportunity to weave in content about alternative communication, the very tools that helped Noah express himself. She explained to the managers that true inclusion isn't just about providing access ramps, but about a genuine willingness to listen to what isn't spoken aloud. Some listened with genuine interest. Others merely nodded, perhaps more concerned with appearing politically correct. But Emily didn't lose heart. She understood that the most significant changes didn't come from confrontation, but from sheer persistence. And she certainly knew the power of insisting, word by word. Noah, for his part, began to flourish in small, tender gestures. His eyes sought Emily's more frequently. His touches, once merely functional, now gained emotional nuances. He would smile upon hearing certain Arabic words, as if recognizing in them a rhythm that truly belonged to him. At school, he began to interact with other children using his new device. He touched the icons with precision, and his teacher remarked that he displayed a unique sense of humor, a particular fondness for animal icons wearing hats, which he would repeat whenever someone praised him. Emily saw in this not just progress, but a burgeoning identity. Her son was truly revealing himself. One day, Emily was called upon to translate for a delicate negotiation with investors from Qatar. During the meeting, she noticed one of the partners speaking with an accent very similar to the one Noah responded to so positively. During the coffee break, she ventured to ask, with great gentleness, if he knew of any literacy methods for non-verbal children within Arabic culture. The man looked at her, first surprised, then deeply touched. He shared that his sister had a son with autism and that they used poetry as a tool. He offered to send her educational materials. Emily, with tears welling in her eyes, thanked him in silent gratitude. It was as if, in that moment, the world was returning her earnest quest. Back in their apartment, she showed Noah the materials. It was a digital book filled with short poems and vivid images. Noah didn't smile, but he sat quietly beside her without prompting. Emily read the words calmly, repeating the rhythms and pauses. Noah pressed his fingers against his own chest, then onto the floor. Finally, he touched 3 icons. Listen, again, Arabic. Emily held back her tears. Her son had asked to hear poetry, in Arabic, again. It was a simple, yet transformative moment. That request contained something far deeper. Pleasure. Not necessity, not routine, but genuine desire. At the company, not everyone viewed Emily's assent with approval. Some murmured that she was only there because of the Arabic incident, as they would say with clear disdain. Others looked at her with suspicious curiosity, as one might observe a piece out of place, when a senior director indirectly questioned her about being prepared enough. Emily responded with quiet elegance. Speaking 9 languages didn't prepare me for this environment, but being Noah's mother certainly did. The silence that followed was more powerful than any argument. For the first time, they realized she didn't need to prove a thing. She was already living proof of competence. One particular day, Noah experienced an intense meltdown at the supermarket. The harsh fluorescent lights and the blare of the security alarm disoriented him completely. Emily held him tightly, softly, singing an Arabic lullaby as she tried to shield him from the disapproving stares of onlookers. A man approached and offered his help. It was the investor from Qatar. He recognized Emily but said nothing of it. He simply knelt down and spoke some tender words to Noah in classical Arabic. Noah looked at him, his eyes still brimming with tears, and touched the calm button on his tablet. For the very first time during a crisis, he was able to express his emotional state. Emily squeezed his hand tightly. That, she knew, was a true victory. From this fortuitous encounter, an unexpected idea emerged, a pilot project for global communication accessibility sponsored by the company. Emily would be responsible for curating the content and creating bilingual materials for children with communication difficulties, especially in multicultural contexts. The project would include visual subtitles, translations in Arabic, American, Sign Language, ASL, and universal pictograms. She accepted, not because she craved status, but because she saw in it the chance to give the world what she had always sought for her son: a voice. The news of the project spread quickly. Before long, other companies in the region began reaching out to Emily for consultations. She politely declined most of them, choosing to focus on depth rather than sheer quantity. She wished to build something that would stand the test of time, something that Noah could one day look at and know had genuine value. Her name now appeared in the footnotes of executive reports, on thank you plaques, and at the bottom of presentations. But what truly moved her was witnessing, from within the system, the seed of inclusion being planted, and planted by her own hands. Noah, on the other hand, continued his predictable days. He cherished Mondays because he'd watched the same episode of a cartoon that no one else seemed to find amusing. His gestures remained consistent, but with a newfound intentionality. He'd touch the wait button when his meal was delayed. He'd touch like, followed by Arabic, when watching calligraphy videos. Emily began to incorporate these responses as invitations to conversation. It was akin to learning to dance to a tune you couldn't hear, but could certainly feel. One Saturday, while visiting the public library, they stumbled upon a workshop on alternative communication for families. Emily, ever curious, signed up without revealing who she was. When it was her turn to introduce herself, the moderator's eyes widened. "Are you the Emily from the Global Voices project?" She nodded, feeling a touch embarrassed. The woman embraced her. She shared that the materials Emily had produced had helped her nephew identify emotions for the very first time. Emily didn't reply aloud. She simply smiled and glanced at Noah, who, at that very moment, was pressing the happy icon. She felt it was the finest reward she could ever receive. As the project took shape, Emily proposed including autistic teenagers in the content curation. She suggested that young people like Noah, even those who were nonverbal, participate with their own unique signs, image choices, and responses via assistive technology. The board hesitated. They feared delays, inconsistencies. Emily insisted. She explained that there was no greater consistency than giving a voice to those who had always been silenced. After weeks of debate, they finally agreed. The materials began to be co-created with autistic young people from various cultures, including users of visual languages and symbolic systems. Emily coordinated it all with the meticulous care of someone who truly understands that language, is, above all else, built on respect. During an internal event, Emily was invited to share her story. She spoke little about herself, but a great deal about Noah. She illustrated how rich his world was, even in silence. She explained that communication wasn't merely about speaking, it was about intention, exchange, and connection. She conveyed that there was beauty in the pauses, in the repetitions, in the words that never reached the lips but shone brightly in the eyes. When she finished, the audience gave her a standing ovation, not out of pity, but out of genuine recognition. She wasn't just an inspiring woman, she was a woman of action. The Global Voices project began to be piloted in various schools. Noah was included in one of them. For the first time, he had access to content designed with his reality in mind. The images weren't generic. The commands respected his pace. The professionals had been trained by individuals like Emily, and that made all the difference. He began to show more interest in sharing his preferences. He would touch the "together" button followed by "books." To Emily, that sounded louder than any motivational speech. One day, on their way home from school, Noah touched 3 icons in succession that he had never used together before. Pride, mommy, work. Emily stopped. She looked at him with tear-filled eyes. It was impossible to know for certain if he understood the full weight of those combined words, but in that moment, it didn't truly matter, because the words had arrived and they had been spoken. In his own unique way, her son had acknowledged everything she did. Emily hugged him tightly, and, for the first time, she wept without trying to hide it. At the end of that year, Emily was invited to participate in an international conference on linguistic inclusion. Her travel expenses would be fully covered, and she would bring Noah along. But more importantly, she would bring her story, not to shine a spotlight on herself, but to show the world that there is a voice even in silence, and that, sometimes, those who have never been heard hold the most powerful words within them. Emily had never before left the country. The international conference, held in Toronto, felt like a world apart. Carpeted corridors, enormous screens, simultaneous interpreters, and experts from every continent. Noah traveled with her, calmer than she had anticipated, observing everything from his quiet corner, his tablet resting on his lap like a friendly shield. Emily was nervous, but not out of fear of speaking. She was simply unsettled by the symbolic weight of it all. A self-taught cleaner, a single mother, representing the intersection of communication, inclusion, and genuine affection. This was far bigger than she was, and for that very reason, she prepared with the same meticulous care she once used to clean the Marlow Tower lobby. On the day of her presentation, she wore a simple, comfortable outfit, dark blue like her old uniform. She carried a folder with notes, but chose to speak from her heart. She recounted her story without embellishment. She explained how learning 9 languages wasn't a matter of innate talent, but of sheer necessity. How motherhood with Noah had taught her more about truly listening than any formal course ever could. She showcased excerpts from the Global Voices project and presented testimonials from children who, like her son, had found ways to express themselves through it. And at the very end, she invited Noah onto the stage. He didn't look at the audience, but he touched 3 icons: music, love, mommy. The auditorium fell silent for a few seconds. Then someone began to applaud. Gradually, the sound grew like a wave. It wasn't just a technical acknowledgement, it was a moment of profound human connection. Emily didn't cry. She simply held Noah's hand and looked at him with serene pride. She knew he might not grasp the full magnitude of the event, but she felt his peacefulness. And that was enough. That journey, that presentation, wasn't the end of a path, but the beginning of a new kind of listening in the world. Following the event, she received dozens of invitations, consultancies, interviews, partnerships with universities. But Emily chose carefully. She refused anything that felt like a mere spectacle. She preferred to work behind the scenes, shaping structures, She only accepted proposals that allowed Noah to remain by her side and that guaranteed a direct impact on real communities. Her focus was clear: to create accessible, straightforward, and replicable tools. She didn't want to build fame, she wanted to build bridges. Noah continued to be the same boy of firm habits and peculiar tastes. He loved drawing with Play-Doh, watching Arabic calligraphy videos, and meticulously lining up seashells by the window. But Emily noticed subtle transformations. He sought more eye contact, smiled frequently at certain sounds, and, above all, began to use his device to name feelings, not with absolute precision, but with clear intention. One day, after hearing a French recording that Emily had left playing softly in the background, he pressed the icons "sweet" and "voice." She understood it as a compliment, and she wept alone in the kitchen, clutching a dish towel in her hands. Back at work in the company headquarters, Emily was greeted with discreet applause and far fewer skeptical glances. Time had solidified her true value. And, more than that, the Global Voices project was now part of the corporation's official inclusion protocol. She began leading a small team, composed of neurodivergent professionals, atypical mothers, and young apprentices. She trained them not only to understand languages, but to decipher the invisible: expressions, routines, symbols. Together, they created a universal glossary for nonverbal autistic individuals in multilingual contexts. It was meticulous work, but profoundly necessary. During one of these meetings, Emily suggested something novel: to include sound recordings of mothers' and fathers' voices in the materials. Real voices with affectionate intonation, so that non-verbal children could feel the rhythm of human speech without the pressure to respond. The idea was met with enthusiasm, and, weeks later, she recorded her own voice saying simple phrases in Arabic, English, and French. One of those phrases was, "I am with you, always." When Noah heard it, he touched the star icon and lay down beside her on the sofa, just as he did when he was a baby. Emily knew then that their language continued to grow. Despite the advancements, Emily knew that the world was still often unwelcoming to those who were different. There were still schools that refused students like Noah, professionals who didn't know how to navigate silence, entire families isolated by shame and exhaustion. For this reason, she decided to create a free training program for educators and caregivers based on her experience with her son. She offered workshops on weekends, both in person and online, where she taught that listening goes far beyond mere hearing, and that respecting another's pace is the very first step toward building empathy. The program was named, fittingly, with the name Noah chose: Blue Time. The Blue Time program expanded. In small inland villages, schools began adjusting their routines to include sensory breaks. In immigrant communities, mothers who spoke little English started using bilingual pictograms to communicate with their children. Amidst all this, Emily received messages from around the world: thank yous, stories, requests for guidance. She read everything calmly, responding gradually and always attentively. She knew that each story, like hers, was an effort toward connection, and she didn't want to leave anyone without a response. One afternoon, on the subway, a young woman shyly approached her. She was an intern at the company where Emily had started as a cleaner. She said she was studying literature and had watched Emily's presentation online. "I never thought it was possible to work with language while being different," she confided. "But now I see that it is." Emily smiled. She asked the young woman what her favorite language was. She replied, "ASL, American Sign Language." Emily, without hesitation, responded with a basic sign she had learned: "Thank you." And the young woman cried because someone had, once again, made an effort to understand. Noah grew. He was no longer a toddler, but he continued to express the world in his own way. Emily knew he might never speak aloud, but that no longer mattered. Because he did speak, with gestures, icons, rhythms. One day, she found a collage he had made on the school whiteboard. There was the star symbol, the mommy button, and images of flags. Emily understood it as a visual sentence: "You are my star in the world." She kept the collage in the envelope where she stored his birth certificates, her diplomas, and old photos. It was her treasure. In a recent interview, Emily was asked the secret to her great success. She laughed. She said she didn't know if it was success. But if it was, it came from a simple place. Listening. Listening to the world with attentive eyes. Listening to children with a heart free of expectations. And listening to herself when everything told her to give up. Because the truth is that all voices have value, even those that don't make a sound. Emily still kept a reduced cleaning shift. By choice. She said it kept her grounded. It was the time when, between one clean floor and another, she thought of new ideas and simply breathed. Her old shift colleagues treated her with respect, but without formalities. It was as if everyone knew. She was still Emily. Only now more heard. At night, beside Noah, she continued reading aloud. She didn't expect spoken answers. But sometimes, he would lean his head on her shoulder, press the right icons, and they would share something greater than dialogue. They shared presence, they shared love, and that was everything. Once someone asked Emily if she regretted not having gone to a formal college. She smiled and replied, "Life educated me in listening, patience, and resilience. No diploma could have given me that." Today, she was called a professor, a consultant, a specialist, but above all, she was a mother, and that was the identity that made her most proud. On the last night of the year, Emily and Noah watched the fireworks from their apartment window. He touched the icons new, year, and, after hesitating, together. Emily hugged him, feeling the warmth of the silent connection they had built over years. Outside, the world celebrated with noise. Inside, they celebrated with listening, because they had learned together that sometimes the most powerful language is the one no one expects to hear.